which has been a really good reading month for me, especially since having my baby and being pregnant. I really struggled to read throughout my pregnancy, but I have actually found it a lot easier since having my baby, so I've been getting back into the groove of reading, and I'm really excited to share with you what I've been reading this month. I also recently bought a Kobo Libra colour, so I have been doing so much reading on that, and I just can't wait to talk about it a bit more and show you what I've been reading on there. So without further ado, let's get started. So I'm going to start with my least favourite book of the month and kind of go up ranking up till my most favourite book of the month. So unfortunately, my least favourite book of the month was The Eyes Are the Best Part by Monica Kim, which I read on my Kobo. I actually bought the book on my Kindle and then transferred it to my Kobo because it was on sale on the Kindle at the time. So that's something you can also do if you already have lots of books on your Kindle. And it's perfectly legal to do that as well. It just takes a bit of tech. So I thought I was going to love this book because quite a few booktubers that I follow loved this, but I was quite disappointed by it. Okay, so this is the synopsis from the Kobo store. Ji-won's life is in disarray. Her father's affair has ripped her family to shreds, leaving her to piece their crappy lives back together. So when her mother's obnoxious new white boyfriend enters the scene, bragging about his flawed knowledge of Korean culture and ogling Asian waitresses in restaurants, Ji-won's hold over her emotions strains as he gawks at her and her sister around their claustrophobic apartment. Ji-won becomes more and more obsessed with his brilliant eyeballs. As her fixation and rage grows, Ji-won decides that she must do the one thing that will save her family and also curb her cravings. Okay, so as you can tell from the synopsis, it's a very strange plot. It's basically about this girl who becomes obsessed with the idea of consuming eyeballs influence over how she wanted the reader to feel overtook the book a little bit. I found the main character incredibly unlikable, and I'm not sure if we are supposed to like her, but it made it difficult to get on board with any of her choices, and the things that she did in the book were very unrealistic, like how she would manage to do certain things, especially at the end. As like a young college student, I can't really say too much because of spoilers, but it was just very unbelievable, and yeah, I didn't enjoy this as much as I hoped, so probably only going to give it 2 stars, unfortunately. So on a more light-hearted note, the next book I read actually wasn't this one, it was the 4th and 5th, so the next 2 books I read were the 4th and 5th installments of Spy Family, but I only have 1, 2 and 3, so I just thought I would tap on the first book, but this is actually a manga series. So let me tell you what it's about. Master Spy Twilight is unparalleled when it comes to going undercover on dangerous missions for the betterment of the world. But when he receives the ultimate assignment to get married and have a kid, he may finally be in over his head. Not one to depend on others. Twilight has his work cut out for him, procuring both a wife and a child for his mission to infiltrate an elite private school. What he doesn't know is that the wife he's chosen is an assassin, and the child he's adopted is a telepath. So that is basically the main premise of the entire series. You have Twilight the spy, who adopts a child who is a telepath and marries an assassin, but none of them know these things about each other, so it creates some very fun and interesting plot points. So I read the 4th and 5th installment of this book series, and I really enjoyed it. It's quite low down on my list just because it's so light-hearted and fun, like it's just a nice little palette cleanser, it's just fun, so let me show you some of the artwork. So if you are looking for like a manga, maybe you don't actually read manga and you'd like to get into it, I think this would be a nice easy one to start with. So yeah, that is next on my list. And then the next book is We Used to Live Here by Marcus Clua. I'm not sure if I pronounced the surname correctly, but this is another horror book. I should have read these books in October, but I got this as a hold from the library and it took a while to come in, so I'll the synopsis to you. Young couple Charlie and Eve can't believe the killer deal they got on an old house in a beautiful yet remote neighbourhood nestled deep in the mountains. One day a man knocks on the door. He claims to have lived in the house years before and asks if he can show his family around. People pleaser to a fault, Eve lets them in. As soon as they enter, strange things start to happen, and Eve wants nothing more than for them to leave and never come back. But they can't or won't take the hint that they are no longer welcome. Then Charlie suddenly vanishes and Eve begins to lose her grip on reality. She's convinced there's something terribly wrong with the house and its past inhabitants. Or is it all in her head? So, this is another book that has been highly rated this year on all the book socials. And another one I was slightly disappointed by. Didn't quite meet my expectations, but I did like it. It was very fast paced, very creepy and very unsettling. There were some moments in the book that I thought, if this was a horror movie, I would be terrified. I would be turning it off and hiding. But I really struggled with the direction that this book ended up going. I feel like it kind of felt quite flat at the end. And I just hoped it had gone a different way. I don't know what way exactly I would have wanted it to go, but I just didn't really like how it wrapped things up. I guess I was just hoping for more. I feel like there was so much kind of build up with this history of this family and this house, and it all kind of just fizzled out towards the end. And yeah, I just wasn't a huge fan of where it ended up. But that being said, I really loved the way it was written and how it felt like watching a horror movie. And I was very, very gripped. It was very easy to read. So this is the author's debut book. But for a debut, I thought it was really good, and I will definitely check out his other books when he writes more. So there we go. So the next book I did borrow as an ebook from my library, but I've already returned it, so I've just got the product page here for you. But it's called The Last Murder at the End of the World by Stuart Durden. And let me just quickly read the synopsis to you. Abby keeps them safe. 122 islanders and their 3 beloved scientists live in harmony, kept safe from a poisonous security barrier with the help of Abby's instructions. Niyama keeps the islanders occupied. Niyama is one of the scientists who remembers what life was like before the fog. She ensures that all of the islanders have a job to do and everyone loves her. Almost everyone. Emery can't stop asking questions, but then one of the scientists is found ask the right questions. They have 107 hours to solve the murder before the fog sweeps them in. Can they stop the end of their world? Okay, so this is my third Stuart Turton book I've actually read. Everything that he has written, because I love everything that he has written so far. His first book is quite a popular, well-known book called The Seven Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, and I love that. And then he also wrote The Devil and the Dark Water, which I thought was really good too. But this one, I have to say, I didn't enjoy it as much. The plot and the idea is very interesting and original. This idea of this island and this fog, and he's solving this murder within this certain amount of time to save the world. Like, so many different things going on there. But at the same time, it felt like it was trying to do a bit too much and trying to be too many genres at once, and it couldn't really work out whether it was this sci-fi dystopian book or a murder mystery. I would have enjoyed it more, I think, without the mystery element. Because I would have liked to have explored this world a bit more, but Turton is known for always having some kind of murder mystery in his book, so I understand that is a staple. That all being said, Stuart Turton has this idea that every single book he writes is going to be on a completely different genre, and as an aspiring writer, I have to respect that so much, because that must be unbelievably hard, and it must be really easy to just want to stay in your comfort zone. So I do appreciate that he is always trying something different, and perhaps this time it just didn't quite work, in my opinion at least, and he has promised a more contemporary thriller type book next time, which I am very excited about because that's one of my favourite genres. So yeah, even though this wasn't my favourite by him, I still found it quite impressive how he juggled this really crazy, elaborate story and plot. As someone who also isn't used to the sci-fi genre, so yeah. And then the second to last book I read was also on my Kobo, and it was also a library book that I borrowed, and that is Dust by Hugh, Howey. This is the third and final installment in the Wall series, which is also now a really popular Apple TV series called Silo. So, maybe I should read you the synopsis of Wall, which is the first book in the series, just in case, because I don't want to give any spoilers for anyone that is in the middle of this series, and it's also not going to make much sense for those who haven't read the other books. In a ruined and hostile landscape, in a future few have been unlucky enough to survive, a community exists in a giant underground silo. Jules is part of this community, but she is different. She dares to hope, and as her walls start closing in, she must decide whether to fight or to die. That doesn't really tell you much about the story, but it's basically about this civilization that live in these underground silos, and they don't really know anything about the outside world, but as the story goes along, they start to discover that things are being hid from them, and they start trying to find out more about what's really going on out there and why they're really in these silos. I was blown away by the first book. I think that's got to be the best book in the entire series. So I'd even recommend just reading that one if you don't want to commit to a full series, but I guarantee once you get to the end of that one, you will not be able to stop. But the third book I thought was good. It definitely kept me going, and I do really struggle with series as I do lose interest, but I was gripped to find out how it was going to end. But I have to say, I was expecting it to be a bit more impactful after all the build-up in the first two books. It felt like what happened at the end just wasn't enough to wrap up the series. I feel like so much more could have happened, and I was a little bit deflated at the end, I won't lie. Overall, I think it is an incredible series and just such a clever concept, but I just would have liked a bit more at the end. After I feel like I put so much time and energy into reading these books, and I just felt like there should have been a bigger payoff, but it was very good, obviously, which is why it's second on my list. But yeah, I just would have liked a little bit more. And then my favourite book of the month, you have to excuse, it was a second-hand book, so it's a little bit dirty, but it is Burial Rites by Hannah Kent. Let me tell you what this is about before I start gushing about it. Also, I love the black sprayed edges again. Not perfect because of being second-hand, but oh well. In northern Iceland, 1829, Agnes Magnusdóttir is condemned to death for her part in the brutal murder of her lover. Agnes is sent to wait out her final months on the farm of District Officer John Johnson, his wife and their two daughters. Horrified to have a convicted murderer in their midst, the family avoid contact with Agnes. Only Toti, the young assistant priest appointed Agnes's spiritual guardian, is compelled to try to understand her. As the year progresses and the hardships of rural life force the household to work side by side, Agnes's story begins to emerge, and with it the family's terrible realization that all is not as they assumed. So this book is actually based on real events, and it's based on the last person to be executed in Iceland, which was this woman called Agnes, who was accused of murder. I just thought this was so beautifully written. I found the characters so compelling, and I really did feel empathy every single character in this book because they are all flawed but all likeable in some way as well. To me, that is when a writer is a complete genius, is when they can give characters faults and make you love them too, because for me that's what being human is about. Nobody is perfect, and you particularly saw this with Agnes, the main character. Even though she's accused of doing this terrible thing from the offset, you really feel deeply empathetic for her. I found this book very dark, emotional, and even though I expected where the ending was going to go based on the premise of the story, I was still absolutely heartbroken. I also loved learning a bit about Icelandic culture, the way their homes are set up, especially in this time period in the 1800s, the food they ate. I find that stuff all so interesting, and it has made me want to read more historical fiction based in other countries so I can learn more about those cultures. So if you have any recommendations, then I would love to hear them. But yeah, this is definitely my favourite book of this month. I read it quite early in November and I haven't stopped thinking about it. It's just such a beautiful book, and I'd love to read more by this author too. I'll give this one an extra tap for being the winner. But those are all the books that I read in November. Sorry this video is a bit long, I just had a lot to talk about, but hopefully I can have another successful reading month, although probably not because it's my birthday and Christmas in December, so I'll be a bit busy, but thank you so much for watching. If you'd like me to talk more about the Kobo, I am planning on doing a full review at some point.